text that I have for this morning's service is not the one in your bulletin. It is actually the pericope text that I have for the fourth Sunday after Easter is found in the 10th chapter of St. John, beginning at the first verse. Very truly I tell you, anyone who does not enter the sheepfold by the gate, but climbs in another way, is a thief and a bandit. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep hear his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. They will not follow a stranger, but they will run from him because they do not know the voice of the stranger. Jesus used this figure of speech with them, but they did not understand what he was saying. So again, Jesus said to them, very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and bandits, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters by me will be saved, and will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they might have life and have it more abundantly. Here ends the gospel for the day. Please be seated. It is very often difficult to really find relevance in one of the texts that we have for a Sunday morning. And it is even more difficult sometimes when we're dealing with a metaphor, because metaphors sometimes are confusing. As a matter of fact, they're so confusing that even when Jesus was using it to instruct his apostles, it says they didn't understand what he was talking about. It's important that the word used for the metaphor is an intrinsic connection to that which it represents. So the confusion today is over the word sheep. Jesus uses the illustration of the sheep and the shepherd to demonstrate his mission and his connection with his people. And it is a little different to understand. It's difficult to understand because I think most of you don't know much about sheep. Is that guess? None of you have a sheep for a pet? Now, if you go into the grocery store in H-E-B or Walmart, and you go next to the counter, you see those magazines on the rack, you'll find all kinds of books or magazines about cats. The personality of cats, how to feed a cat, all the different kinds of cats, and the same is with dogs. But how many do you find about sheep? Probably none. It is estimated that 1 out of 100 people know very little about sheep. I think they still have pet sheep at for FFA, right? Is that correct? Yeah. So there's a few that have had some association with the sheep. In our text, Jesus describes himself and our relationship with him as sheep and he the shepherd. The importance of sheep was great in the times of Jesus. Not only was the sheep important for food, it was important for clothing. It was also important as a sacrifice. Because the really rich people, when they came to offer a worship to their God, if they could afford it, they used a sheep. If you couldn't afford it, then you used a bird or some kind of lesser thing to show your appreciation to God's involvement with you. But the sheep was the most important. It was a very large part of the economy. The wealthy people had herds of sheep. Now, the role of a shepherd was not that important in terms of his status in society. As a matter of fact, they were one of the lowest. And yet, when we hear the Christmas story, the first ones that the angels come to that proclaim the birth of Christ are shepherds. Absolutely essential. They were very important, but not very respected. They were on the low edge of the social scale. It's kind of like teachers and ministers today. Important, but not really respected as occupations anymore. And I know there might be argument about that, but I think that's pretty accurate presentation. Sheep were important. The shepherd was important. And so the question I'm going to ask you today, and actually the theme for the sermon is, are you feeling a little sheepish? And maybe did you think that feeling sheepish isn't something that's great, but I hope to change your mind by the end of the sermon. The first thing we learn about this gospel text for the fourth Sunday of Easter is that we are considered sheep. And if somebody said you're a sheep, you probably wouldn't like it very much, but you couldn't understand why. Because you don't know that much about the character of sheep. And I'll tell you, it isn't that easy to find a lot of information about sheep when you're writing a sermon. But I looked in the Interpreter's Bible, or dictionary. It's 4 volumes long. It's about 6,000 pages. And I looked up the word sheep. It had less than 2 columns of information about a sheep. And what it said about the personality of sheep is that they are affectionate. They are unaggressive. You don't have a lot of sheep fighting each other. They're not going to attack. Nobody reports in the news that they've been bitten by a sheep. They are relatively defenseless. They don't have a lot of the protective devices that all the other animals seem to have. And they are in constant state of need. That's the Interpreter's Dictionary definition of the characteristics of a sheep. And maybe at this point you're saying, well, that's not so bad, but really doesn't affect me. I'm not all that affectionate. You might be aggressive, and you might be relatively defensive, but I don't think you think you're that. There are some other definitions, more common. They said that basically sheep are unintelligent. They've got very limited intelligence. They are not unique in finding food. As a matter of fact, they will follow an old path to go to a place to eat where they're familiar with and pass up very verdant fields in which they could eat, which they will pass by just because, as a matter of habit, because the major characteristic of sheep is that they are herd sensitive. The herd is very important. Another definition of sheep is that they are listless wanderers, and they are timid and stubborn. Now you're saying, okay, I guess I do have a few characteristics of a sheep, or maybe your spouse is the one that has the characteristics of a sheep. It also says that sheep probably are frightened by very ridiculous things. And then, at other times, nothing can move them, and they're extremely stubborn. Characteristics of a sheep. But as we start defining a sheep in a little more detail, we found out, yes, there are a lot of characteristics that we have. We are sort of defenseless. Probably not very aggressive. And we are in constant state of need. That much we know, understand, and accept. Maybe at this point you are feeling a little sheepish. The second thing the text says is Jesus said that he was a shepherd and he watches over us because we need a shepherd. He said there are other shepherds that come on and try and lead you, but they will only lead you astray. He is the only true shepherd, the one who really cares for you and for your eternity. We all need somebody that we feel is watching over us. And Jesus says he is watching over us. He is very protective of us, and he is willing to give his life up to die for us. One of the pastors writing in regard to this text said that his whole life is kind of focused on the 23rd Psalm. Most familiar psalm to all of us is the 23rd Psalm. As a matter of fact, I'm sure some of you could almost recite that from heart. And when I went to the funeral yesterday over at St. John's, went over there, and I was thinking about the sermon at the same time, and I said there's about a 75-80% chance that 23rd Psalm would be read about Jesus as the shepherd, the protector. But this person that was writing about the 23rd Psalm and basing his life on it said that he, in his own mind, made up the two angels named Surely in goodness and mercy were always around him, guiding him. That's from the 23rd Psalm. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. He said he always believed that these two angels were always guiding him. And he made a comment about a particular place where he stopped at a road with an older couple that was heading their car off the side of the road and were waving and looking for help. It was an elderly couple. He went up to him, told him he was a pastor and wouldn't do anything that he needed to help them. And they said, well, we're low on gas and we don't think we're going to make it to the gas station. Could you take us to the gas station and get some gas and bring it back? And he said, well, I've got a better idea. He said, why don't you get back in your car and you drive and I'll be right there to help you if you run out of gas. But you'll be closer to the pump so I won't have to come back so far and maybe you'll make it. But I will always be there right by you. He said they drove, and of course, they made it entirely to the station. They thanked him for his generosity, for his kindness, for his goodness, and his mercy. He said, that's kind of the way I see God in my life. He's always there right by me, urging me to go on my own, always being there, and reassuring me that I won't have to be on my own. I kind of understand this. When I know that you know that I managed a nursing home and owned a nursing home for a number of years. It was one night at 3 o'clock in the morning. I was called. It was a stormy night out. And the head nurse was calling me and said, "Can you please come up?" And I said, "What's the emergency? Did somebody pass away?" And he said, "No, but Louise won't go to bed. She said she won't go to bed unless you come up. And she's assured that you'll be here and protect her." So at 3 o'clock in the morning, much to my dislike, I got up and drove up. And I went inside, and she was sitting in the waiting room. And I said, "Louise, isn't it time for you to go to bed?" And she said, "Well, now that you're here, you'll take care of things." And I was thinking to myself, man, there's nothing I can do about the weather. And yet, she thinks of me as somebody who is always there and protecting her. And sometimes people do regard us as shepherds. Somebody that will be there if they really need somebody. In that way, we are imitators of Christ, because that's what He's promised for us. He is the true shepherd, the one who cares, the one that will always be there, to be on call, because we are in constant state of need. Now, are you feeling a little more sheepish? The final thing, as our text says, is that it's a very personal shepherd. He calls us by name. He is very, very much in touch with us. And if we speak in this multitude of all the people in the world, He can hear our voice. He knows who we are. And He will call us by name. Another minister, in writing about this, said he was at a sheep farm. And they were shearing the sheep. And they had to separate those young sheep from the older sheep that were going to be sheared for wool. They said there was one little sheep when she was taken away from the group, that started squealing. And he said all the sheep looked alike, and all the bleating seemed the same. He said sounded like any other little sheep. He said, but one thing suddenly appeared, and that was the mother running through the whole herd because she heard the voice of her own. And he said, in terms of my understanding of how God works with me, I see that as very much a metaphor for the way God works. That if I squeal my little voice and ask Him for help, He knows me. He knows me by name. And He will come and deliver me. Now, are you feeling a little more sheepish? And I'll tell you what. If you're feeling sheepish, then come and participate in the Lord's Supper. Because that's what it's about. It's about people who are in constant state of need, who know they have a shepherd, and know that when you call with your little voice, He will hear and deliver you, forgive your sins, and take you unto Himself. Amen. The hymn is In the Garden. Please stand as you are able.